A 19-year-old named Caleb Monroe stood in court after damaging an elderly man's food truck and calling it a joke. He acted relaxed and uninterested, keeping his hands in his pockets and avoiding eye contact with the truck's owner, a 78-year-old Navy veteran named Walter Briggs. Walter had spent more than 50 years working and depended on his food truck, called Walt's Wagon, to earn a living. For 6 years, the truck had been parked at the same corner every weekday morning, serving affordable breakfast to workers and veterans in the neighborhood. It was not a hobby for Walter, but his main source of income and daily purpose. When Caleb and his friends decided to record a prank for social media, they damaged the truck, ruined supplies, and made it unusable, leaving it sitting in an impound lot. Their actions erased a week of Walter's income and took away his ability to serve the people who relied on him. Judge Frank Caprio had already reviewed the evidence, including security footage, the video posted online, and repair costs Walter could not afford up front. In court, Caleb claimed they thought the truck was abandoned because it looked old and worn, and he insisted they were only trying to make people laugh. Judge Caprio calmly pointed out that the truck was legally parked, clearly marked, and actively used every day. The judge explained that being careless does not excuse causing harm, especially when someone's livelihood is affected. Throughout the hearing, Walter remained quiet and composed, showing dignity built from decades of hard work and service. The courtroom grew tense as Judge Caprio made it clear that accountability means understanding the real impact of one's actions, not brushing them off as harmless fun. He asked Caleb to listen carefully to the testimony and reflect on what "just messing around" truly means to someone whose entire livelihood was taken away in a moment of thoughtlessness. When Officer Lane arrived at the scene, he found Mr. Walter Briggs standing beside his food truck, which had been badly damaged. The serving window had been spray-painted with inappropriate markings, the generator housing was broken and no longer worked, the propane lines had been disconnected, and food supplies that were stored inside overnight had been thrown onto the ground and ruined. The estimated cost of the damage was more than $4,200. When Judge Caprio asked if the people responsible were identified, Officer Lane explained that Caleb Monroe had posted a video of the incident on social media about 3 hours later. The video showed Caleb and 2 others damaging the truck while laughing and making jokes, clearly treating the situation as entertainment. The video was labeled as a prank and included captions meant to attract attention online. When Officer Lane contacted Caleb, he said Caleb was defensive and repeatedly claimed it was only a joke. Even after being told how serious the damage was, Caleb showed no concern for Mr. Briggs and assumed the loss would be covered by insurance. He even asked whether the video could be removed so it would not hurt his online following. Court records described the incident as commercial vandalism and noted that the defendant's attitude showed a lack of responsibility. The courtroom became very quiet as Judge Caprio listened, clearly disappointed that someone so young could dismiss another person's hardship so easily. When asked if the officer's description was accurate, Caleb admitted he felt a little bad but insisted they never meant to hurt anyone and were only bored and trying to be funny. Judge Caprio calmly explained that damaging property is not a prank and that calling it content does not change the harm it caused. Before allowing Caleb to respond further, the judge asked Mr. Briggs to speak so the court could understand the real impact. Walter Briggs stood slowly and took the witness seat with care, showing the quiet confidence of someone who had worked hard his entire life. He explained that he bought the food truck 6 years earlier using his Navy pension savings after his wife passed away, needing both income and a reason to leave the house each day. During his service, he had worked in a ship's kitchen and used those skills to serve affordable breakfasts. Every weekday morning, he parked in the same spot by 6:30 a.m., serving construction workers, office employees, and veterans from a nearby clinic who often could not afford a hot meal. He kept prices low, not to get rich, but to survive and help others. He then described arriving one morning to find spray paint on the truck, the generator damaged, propane lines loose, and all of his prepared food ruined on the pavement. For Walter, the damage meant more than repairs, it meant lost income, broken routine, and the feeling that years of honest work had been treated as something meaningless. Walter Briggs explained that after discovering the damage, he stood beside his truck for nearly 20 minutes trying to understand why anyone would do such a thing. When he finally looked at Caleb in the courtroom, there was no anger on his face, only sadness. Walter said he had to call his regular customers that morning and tell them he could not serve food. One of them, a man named Tommy who came every day and lived in a shelter, became emotional and told Walter that breakfast from the truck was the one thing he looked forward to because it made him feel seen and valued. Walter explained that having to turn him away was painful, especially knowing it happened because someone thought his work was a joke. He told the court that the truck was not a hobby but his purpose, his way of paying rent, and his way of giving back to people who had served their country. When the truck was damaged, it took away his ability to do what gave his life meaning. A voicemail from a longtime customer was played, offering help with repairs and reminding Walter how many people depended on him. The courtroom grew quiet as the weight of Walter's words settled in. Caleb's posture softened, and Judge Caprio thanked Walter for sharing something so personal. Turning to Caleb, the judge explained that the $4,200 repair estimate did not include lost income, missed meals for customers, or the emotional toll of having years of hard work treated as entertainment. The judge told Caleb that this was not about broken equipment but about damaging someone's livelihood and sense of purpose. When asked if he understood, Caleb quietly admitted he had not thought about it that way. Judge Caprio responded that failing to think does not remove responsibility and explained that treating another person's struggles as online content causes real harm. The judge reviewed a timeline showing how the incident happened overnight, how the video was posted hours later, and how the damage was discovered early the next morning. He then spoke calmly, explaining that anger would not teach the lesson needed here. What mattered was learning that other people's lives are not jokes and that responsibility means considering the impact of one's actions. Judge Caprio asked Caleb who depended on him, and after some thought, Caleb mentioned his parents and friends. The judge then asked him to imagine being older, having served his country, lost his spouse, and built something meaningful, only to have it destroyed for attention. Caleb admitted it would feel devastating and hopeless. Judge Caprio concluded by explaining that this was the pain Walter experienced and that understanding this truth was the first step toward real accountability. Caleb finally admitted that he did not have a good reason for what he did, saying he acted without thinking and had become used to treating everything like a joke, even though real life is not a joke. Judge Caprio explained calmly that actions always have consequences and that every person's work has value, especially when it supports their ability to live and serve others. Treating someone's livelihood with disrespect sends the message that their struggles do not matter, and the judge asked Caleb if that was the kind of person he wanted to be. Caleb broke down and apologized sincerely, saying he never wanted to hurt anyone. The courtroom remained silent as Judge Caprio explained the sentence. Caleb was ordered to pay full restitution for the damage to Mr. Briggs's truck, covering all repair costs, regardless of how hard he would need to work to do so. He was also required to complete 180 hours of community service supporting veterans who struggle with food access, so he could see firsthand the people who depended on services like the damaged food truck. In addition, Caleb was ordered to write a meaningful letter of apology to Mr. Briggs, explaining what he had learned, along with a reflective essay to be reviewed by the court. The judge also required Caleb to work directly with Mr. Briggs for 30 days once the truck was repaired, helping with food preparation, serving customers, and cleaning, so he could learn what it takes to build something through honest work. The judge made it clear that this was meant to teach responsibility, empathy, and respect, not just to punish. Caleb agreed to all the terms, promising through tears that he would follow through and that he now understood the harm he caused. When asked if he wanted to say anything, Mr. Briggs told Caleb that he did not need dramatic apologies, only reassurance that Caleb now understood how much people's work and purpose matter. Judge Caprio gave Caleb clear deadlines to complete the requirements and warned that failure to do so would result in stricter penalties. As the court adjourned, Caleb watched Mr. Briggs leave, realizing that making things right would take time and effort. His first day of community service was humbling, as he worked in a large food program serving veterans, preparing meals, cleaning, and listening to stories from people who relied on those meals every day. As he worked beside long-term volunteers, Caleb began to understand that food, dignity, and purpose are deeply connected, and that real growth comes from caring about others, not chasing attention. By the second week of service, the work becomes more challenging for Caleb. He stands on the serving line each morning, handing meals to men and women who once served their country and now rely on food programs because they cannot afford regular meals. One older veteran named Carl thanks him several times for a single plate of eggs. Caleb tells him he does not need to say thank you, but Carl gently explains that when someone has gone without, gratitude is a way of holding on to dignity and humanity. That moment stays with Caleb throughout the day, making him think about what it means to feel seen and valued. By the fourth week, his attitude begins to change. He stops watching the clock and no longer worries about social media or online attention. Instead, he listens to the people around him and learns their stories, realizing that service is not about attention or praise but about showing up consistently and treating people with respect. Supervisors note in his service records that he has gone from being resistant to fully engaged, showing real care and empathy, and that veterans respond positively to him. Writing the apology letter to Walter takes time, as Caleb struggles to find words that feel honest rather than forced. After many attempts, he sets aside polished language and simply writes the truth, admitting his regret for damaging the truck, dismissing Walter's work, and sharing how working with veterans has helped him understand the importance of dignity, routine, and care. He acknowledges that the truck represented far more than food and promises to never again treat someone's livelihood as entertainment. When the supervised work with Walter begins, Caleb arrives early on a cold morning to find the truck fully repaired and Walter already preparing for the day. Walter keeps things simple, welcoming Caleb with a nod and expecting him to work hard. The days are physically demanding, filled with food preparation, serving customers, cleaning equipment, and learning the rhythm of a long morning shift. Caleb's hands ache and his back grows sore, but he does not complain. Instead, he watches how Walter treats every customer with kindness and remembers names, orders, and small details that matter. As the weeks pass, Caleb begins to understand the purpose behind the work. He learns why Walter keeps prices low, not to make more money, but to make sure people can eat. He starts arriving early without being asked, preparing supplies ahead of time, and finding pride in making the mornings run smoothly. Through this experience, Caleb realizes that real fulfillment comes from helping others and building something meaningful, not from seeking attention or approval, and that respect, care, and responsibility are choices made every day. Caleb begins to truly care about the work, not because the court requires it, but because he sees what it means to the people who line up every morning. One day, a regular customer named Tommy does not show up, and Walter notices right away. Knowing this is unusual, Caleb offers to check on him. Walter agrees and tells him where Tommy stays. Caleb walks to the nearby shelter and finds Tommy sitting quietly, clearly having a difficult day. Caleb sits with him, listens, and offers to bring him breakfast from the truck. Tommy is touched, explaining how much those small routines mean to him. As Caleb listens, he realizes this is what Walter has been doing for years, showing up consistently, listening, and reminding people they matter. Service records later note that Caleb completed his supervised work with excellent effort, often staying longer than required and showing real care for the customers. When the final court date arrives, Caleb stands again in the same courtroom, but this time with humility and confidence shaped by experience. Walter sits nearby with his truck repaired and his routine restored. The clerk confirms that Caleb has completed all requirements, including full restitution, community service, written reflections, and supervised work, and notes that he continued volunteering even after his obligation ended. Judge Caprio asks Caleb what he has learned, and Caleb explains that people are not entertainment, that struggle deserves respect, and that building something meaningful takes effort but matters more than attention. Walter then speaks, sharing that while forgiveness takes time, he saw real effort, responsibility, and care in Caleb's actions, and that those choices matter more than words alone. Caleb apologizes directly, expressing gratitude for the chance to learn and grow, and Walter accepts his sincerity with a simple handshake. Judge Caprio closes the case by reminding Caleb that the world needs people who serve others and build with purpose. As they leave the courtroom together, Walter invites Caleb to return to the truck the next morning. Caleb agrees without hesitation, realizing that what truly matters is not recognition or approval, but showing up for people, offering kindness, and creating something that helps others feel seen and valued.